All right, here we have the incomparable Casey again helping us out. We're going to be doing a postural assessment on her today. We always start the postural assessment with the posterior view, then we move to the lateral views, and we end with the anterior view. I think that the posterior and the lateral views are going to give you almost everything you need, and then the anterior view is kind of like the icing on the cake. Something to note, postural assessment is a skill that needs to be developed. As you're learning, it's better to write down every single little thing that you see. So if that's what you're doing, if you're doing the lab, just write down every single little thing you think you could possibly see. If you're having trouble identifying, I recommend that if you're having trouble doing this, I recommend trying on several different people. So practice makes perfect. The more that you practice the skill, the better you're going to be at it. So trying on different body types, different people, different physical activity, occupational stresses will help you become better at doing this postural assessment. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk to you about congenital, abnormalities that people may be born with that you might see. And then I'll talk to you about lifestyle or occupational abnormalities, I guess is what you would call it, and then how to fix those. And I'll do that at each view. So the first thing I do is I'm going to start at her feet. Well, I've got a plumb line here. A plumb line is a piece of string that's hung from the ceiling with a little weight at the end of it. You can see there's like a fishing weight at the end of this one. She's standing in front of it, and the plumb line is bisecting her body. I've also got a postural analysis grid, which is helpful to help me find horizontal differences. So I think the plumb line is better for comparing left to right vertically, and the grid chart is good for like, are her shoulders the same height? Are her hips the same height? Are her, it's comparing like on the horizontal. So I start with her ankles and I see, is there anything, oh, your socks, we forgot to ask you to take your socks off. It's all right, we're gonna move through because you're perfectly aligned with the plumb line and I don't wanna mess with it. Maybe what you could do is just pull down, don't touch the actually, I'll pull it down for you if that's okay. This so that I can see your Achilles. Thank you. So I'm looking for anything going on at her Achilles. I do see that the left Achilles goes in. She's got a little bit more valgus or coming in on the left side than she has on the right side. I move up to the knees. Here I'm looking for valgus, which again is the knees coming in towards each other, knock knee. I don't see anything there. I look at the knee creases. The lighting is kind of weird in here, so hard to see her knee creases, but looks the same. Looking at the distance from the plumb line from left to right, looks pretty good. Now I move up to the hips. It's kind of hard to see here. She's got a lot of clothing and it's black, so it's hard to tell. But Casey, could you put your hands on your hips? Perfect. So here, this gives me an idea of where her hips are. I can see based on the plumb line, it's pretty much bisecting her spine perfectly. So it looks like there might be something going on in her hips to cause her to be shifted a little bit to the right side. If we look at her hands, it does look like the right hip is just a tiny bit higher than the left hip. And I did notice this before we started recording, and I asked her about it, but she doesn't have any issues, so no problems. Moving up, we can't really see her spine, but if she were not wearing a shirt, or if you were assessing a male who didn't have a shirt on, you'd be able to see whether or not there was scoliosis. Here then I look at can you put your hands back down? I'm just looking at her scapula now. Again, the lighting is not coming from directly above, so they look pretty symmetrical. I'm looking at the distance between her torso and her arms. That looks symmetrical. Looking at her neck, it does appear that there is a slight shift to the left of her head. I'm not sure if that may be related to whatever's going on at the hip. And the shoulders appear to be about the same height. Maybe the right shoulder is slightly lower than the left shoulder. Casey, are you right-handed?
Yes.
Which would make sense because the arm that we use more tends to be lower than the arm that we don't use. So the dominant arm that's a common finding in postural assessment. So now I'm going to go over the congenital things that we can't really change. So looking at the feet, if her feet are pronated, meaning she has flat feet, she was born with it, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The next thing that you might look at are the knees either being bowed or knocked. So valgus would be knock knees, varus would be kind of bow legs. That's congenital. There's really not much we can do about that. Going up to the hips, let's see what else might be congenital. Some scoliosis would be congenital. So some lateral curvature in the spine at any point, lumbar, thoracic, cervical, or probably not cervical, but lumbar, thoracic. There's really not much you can do about that. As for things that occur as a result of lifestyle, we might see, so I actually think that this little shift that she has to the right in her hips is probably related to lifestyle. You might see differences in the scapula. If it's not, sometimes the scapula can look strange. I don't want to say strange. They can look imbalanced if somebody has scoliosis. So before you make a determination about the scapula, you got to make sure that they don't have scoliosis. If they don't have scoliosis, then you know that whatever's going on with the scapula is a lifestyle thing. And I think those are pretty much, so uneven hips would be like a lifestyle thing, unless somebody has a leg length discrepancy, meaning that one leg is longer than the other. It doesn't look like she has that here. It looks like she just is shifted to the left. I don't know, it's possible, but this looks like just a little bit of lifestyle stuff to me. All right, so let's move on to the lateral view. Okay, so here I have Casey aligned with the plumb line, and I have selected to have the plumb line bisect for her lateral malleolus, so that's her ankle. It's right in the middle of her ankle. I'm gonna work my way up from the floor here, checking to see that all the major joints are in line with the ankle first. So I'm looking at the ankle, the knee, the hip, the shoulder, and the external ear, so the ear canal basically. So I'll start there. Ankle looks good. I go up to the knee. The knee looks good. It bisects the knee. She mentioned to me that she thinks that she has a little bit of hyperextended knees, and she is correct. They are slightly hyperextended here. Moving up to the hip, you can see that her hips are slightly in front of the line. So we'll go over what that means. We go up. Now, her shoulders, it doesn't quite bisect her shoulders. Her shoulders are slightly behind the line. Then I go up to her ear, and her ear is slightly in front of the line. So we'll go through one by one, trying to think, okay, let's talk about the congenital things first. So here, congenital is, she was born with those hyperextended knees. I don't need to give her any more hyperextension, and I don't need to work to give her any less. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Congenital, somebody's born with these things. It just means that maybe they have an increased risk of certain type of injuries, but really not a problem at all. What else? Congenital. Not sure you're going to see too much congenital stuff from this angle. Again, if somebody has scoliosis, you might see something on the lateral finding, but the other ones, the valgus, the varus, you're not going to see, because those you see in the frontal plane, in the front, in the back. So the knees look good going up to the hips. It looks like she has those forward hips. Those can come from, looks like she's got an anterior pelvic tilt, like her, I don't want to say her stomach is protruding, but it looks like she's maybe got some weakness in the abdomen, right? And maybe some weakness, some tightness in the low back. I'm going to jump in the screen so you can see. I often have students tell me, how can I tell the difference between lordosis and junk in the trunk? Well, junk in the trunk happens down here, and lordosis happens up here. So you can actually see from her lateral view that she's got a little bit of an excess curvature up here. It can result in looking like there's more junk in the trunk, but you can have junk in the trunk without having lumbar lordosis. So these findings are kind of like really common. She might also be coming forward a little bit because I think mostly this looks like weak abdominals to me. Do you agree that I don't know, what is your lifestyle? Do you do a lot of abdominal work?
I do a lot of abs.
Do you do small abs? Or do you do like big ab work, you know, like V-ups and like...
It's like a good combination of both.
Interesting. You're spending a lot of time sitting though in front of your computer lately. So that can contribute to the abdominal. It can contribute to, yeah, this might be the lifestyle thing, you know? So moving up the shoulders, it looks like she's got a little bit of rounded shoulders. I'm not gonna say she's got thoracic kyphosis, but if she keeps up her current routine, she's working on it. So she's got a little bit of the rounded shoulders, which in turn is causing a little bit of the forward head. So she's probably doing something, and we were just talking about this, like looking down at electronic devices. So looking down at electronic devices can cause both the rounding of the shoulders and the forward head, but this is very mild. How are we going to correct these lifestyle things? So for what's going on at the hips, she needs to be doing strengthening of the abs and strengthening of the glutes. She needs to be stretching the erector spinae where the lumbar lordosis is occurring, and she needs to be stretching the hip flexors. Actually, Casey is a spin instructor. She is a spin enthusiast, and an imbalance between the abdominals and the rectus femoris, or the hip flexors, can actually cause what we're seeing here. So maybe it's that your hip flexors are so tight that it doesn't matter how much ab work you're doing, because the other things that you're doing, the sitting and the spinning, are just like that. The abs are losing the tug of war. So she could probably work on that protrusion by doing a lot of stretching of the rectus femoris. Probably address how much she's sitting. Do you agree with that? So sitting less, stretching more, strengthening, but light strengthening of those smaller muscles. Moving up to the shoulders, the hunching, the looking down at electronic equipment. That's how we're going to address it. We got to address those lifestyle factors, and then we got to also address with exercises. So I don't know, maybe she needs to set an alarm to cue herself to bring her shoulders back and her head back. Maybe she needs to stand while she works with an ergonomic situation where she's not looking down. She needs to stretch her pecs because they're shortened, pulling her arms in. She needs to stretch her neck extensors and her upper traps because they're causing her forward head. She needs to strengthen her neck flexors by doing some chin tucks. Can you show us a chin tuck? There we go, perfect. And she needs to do some strengthening of the muscles, the lats, lower lats, the muscles in between her scats. Yeah, I think this is really mild. I'm being super crazy. And I hope that when you're doing your analyses, you're also being super crazy, because this is how you learn. All right, so we're skipping the second lateral view just because I'm showing you this just for the sake of an example. We've been playing around with this. I tried to film it a different way, but I came back to this way because I think it's a little bit better than the way I was doing it. We'll start with her feet. I don't think you can tell in the video. She does have flat feet. It's even hard for me to tell which one's more flat. It looks like the right foot might be more flat, which is interesting because from the posterior view, it looked like her Achilles on her left side was coming in. Going up to her knees, they look pretty evenly spaced. It does appear that the left knee is closer to the plumb line than the right knee. Going up to her hips, put your hands on your hips. Okay. It looks like the right hip is a little bit higher. Can you do like this? Yeah, it looks like the right hip is. It's hard to tell from the light. It looks like one is maybe they're even. I don't know. So let me look at that. No, I'm trying to use the horizontal line to tell. Maybe the left hip is slightly higher than the right hip. Is that what we found on the other side?
I thought it was that.
It was the opposite. Oh boy, conflicting findings. Okay, put your hands down. You can see now as we move up why I had such a hard time aligning her. I tried to do the last take, bisecting her face, but it just looked weird at the legs, so I decided to bisect the legs here. And her whole body is kind of shifted to the left-hand side. It's hard to tell where this is coming from. I just was thinking a little bit about her posterior findings. I wish I had written them down so I had them in front of me. I think I said that her left foot was flatter than her right foot, which would cause her left knee to come in a little bit, which would cause her left hip to come down a little bit, which would cause her right hip to come up a little bit, which would cause your left shoulder, which would cause the right hip to come up, which would cause the left shoulder to come down, and the whole upper body to shift to the left. All right, so I'm going to repeat that. From the posterior view, I saw that her left foot was flatter than her right foot. That would make her left knee come in closer to the center, which it does here, and it would make her right knee go a little bit further from the center. It would make her left hip come down a little bit, which it does a tiny bit, and it would make her right hip go up a little bit. Then it would make her left shoulder come down a little bit, and it would make her shift her whole body to the left a little bit. So she's actually right-handed, but from here her left shoulder looks lower. But that's because she's a little bit unbalanced here. And I think that this is a perfect example to show you how like something little can then add up to something a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then you can see a few years down the line how this might contribute to a more chronic injury probably, or some back pain or something. I don't know, it might lead to something in the long run. So this is something that she would need to address. It appears to me that because it's coming from the flat foot, she might benefit from something like an orthotic. That's outside the scope of this class. But since she ain't broke, we're not going to fix it. This is just something for her to consider. But we can still address those other lifestyle factors. What we're seeing here appears to me to be more of a congenital issue relating to her feet being flat, perhaps one foot being flatter than the other, which has consequences all the way up the line. So I'm just going to review again these congenital things, flat feet, or even high arches. So high arches, we'll see the ankles bow out. With flat feet, we'll see the ankles kind of cave in. And then we've got hyperextended knees. We'll have valgus and varus. So valgus is knock knees, varus is bow leg. Then we'll see scoliosis. Those are the major ones, and there's nothing that we can do to address those. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If they're not complaining of anything, don't refer them to someone. And just strengthen bilaterally the best you can. For those things that we see that are lifestyle related, we need to address the lifestyle issues. So this maybe spend less time seated or less time hunched over, or whatever it is of the lifestyle that's causing the imbalance. We need to stretch the tight muscles. The tight muscles are usually the rectus, the hip flexors, the back extensors, erector spinae, the pecs, the chest muscles, the upper neck, the upper traps, and the neck extensors. And then we need to strengthen the muscles that are elongated from our poor posture or lifestyle or whatever. Those would be the glutes, so the hip extensors, the abs, the trunk flexors, the neck flexors, and the scapular retractors, the lower traps.